My family gave me a plane ticket to fulfill my lifelong dream. When I opened it and saw it was a one-way ticket with no return, I knew they wanted to be rid of me forever. But what I did before I left destroyed them in a way they never could have imagined. My name is Diane. I'm 69 years old, and I own 3 houses and a business worth more than $200,000. Or rather, I was the owner, because after what they did to me, I decided it was time for my dear family to learn what it means to betray the one who gave them everything. Friday night, Jasmine came to my house holding a gold-wrapped box and a smile I hadn't seen since her father died 5 years ago. It was that fake smile she put on when she needed money to pay off the debts of Mark, her useless husband, who had never been able to hold a job for more than 6 months. "Mum, sit down," she said, gently pushing me toward the couch in my living room. "Mark and I have something very special for you." Mark came in behind her, carrying a bottle of cheap champagne, and that used car salesman grin I loathed so much. Even Melissa, my 20-year-old granddaughter, was there, which was odd because she usually only showed up when she needed money for college. They all acted like it was my birthday, but that was still 2 months away. The house smelled of the expensive perfume Jasmine bought with the money I lent her every month, mixed with the scent of red roses on the dining room table. "Open it, Grandma," Melissa said, recording everything on her phone as if it were the most important moment of our lives. The flash bothered me, but she kept recording without stopping. My hands trembled as I untied the ribbon. Inside the box was a thick envelope, the kind airlines use for important tickets. My heart started beating faster. For a moment, a spark of hope ignited in my chest. Had they planned a family vacation? I opened the envelope carefully. It was a plane ticket. Destination, Sydney, Australia. "Surprise!" they all shouted in unison, as if they had rehearsed the scene. "You're going to Australia, your lifelong dream." For a second, I was breathless. Australia had indeed been my dream since I was young. My late husband always said that someday we would go together to see the kangaroos and the endless beaches. But he passed away, and the dream stayed buried in my heart, like a wound that never healed. "I can't believe it," I murmured, holding the ticket in my trembling hands. The departure date was in a week, but this must have cost a fortune. "Don't worry about the money, Mum," Jasmine interrupted, approaching me with that honeyed voice she used when she was lying. "Mark and I have been saving for this. You deserve it." A lie. I knew perfectly well they had no money. Just last month, Mark had come to ask me for a $3,000 loan because his car was about to be repossessed. And the week before, Jasmine had cried in my kitchen because they couldn't pay their home mortgage. But I decided to play along. I continued to look at the papers in the envelope, feigning excitement while my instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. And then I saw it, in small but clear letters. "One-way ticket only. Return flight not included." The world stopped. I read the line over and over, hoping my 69-year-old eyes were playing a trick on me, but there was no mistake. It was a one-way ticket. "Jasmine," I said in a calm voice, though inside I felt as if a knife had been plunged into my stomach. "This ticket doesn't have a return flight." "Oh, Mum," she laughed nervously, avoiding my gaze. "We thought you'd like to stay there as long as you wanted. No pressure, no deadlines, total freedom." "Stay in Australia forever?" "Not forever," Mark quickly interjected, but his voice sounded false, like when he tried to sell me his business ideas that never worked. "Just until you decide to come back. When you want to return, you call us and we'll send you the money for the return ticket." Liars. They were both first-class liars, but I was smarter than they thought. I had survived 70 years in this world, raised a daughter, built a business from scratch, and buried the love of my life. I wasn't going to let these vultures fool me so easily. That's so generous of you," I said, forcing a smile as I put the ticket back in the envelope. "I just need some time to process it. It's a very big surprise." Melissa stopped recording for a moment with a confused expression. They expected tears of happiness, hugs, and eternal thanks, not my calm, controlled reaction. "Are you happy, Mum?" Jasmine asked, moving closer, her eyes searching my face for the emotion she expected. "Of course I am, honey," I lied with the same ease she had been lying to me for years. "I just need a few days to get my things in order here, to temporarily close the business and let the tenants of the houses know." "Don't you worry about that," Mark said too quickly. "We can take care of everything while you're away." Of course they could. They had it all planned out. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed holding the one-way ticket in my wrinkled hands, while Jasmine's and Mark's words echoed in my head like funeral bells. "We can take care of everything while you're away." Oh, of course. They would take care of selling my properties, closing my business, and divvying everything up like hungry vultures. But they didn't know who they were messing with. At 6 a.m., I called Gloria, my younger sister. She was the only person in this world I could still trust, the only one who had stood by me when my husband died, the only one who had never asked me for money or lied to my face. "Diane, what's wrong?" she answered in a worried voice. "It's 6 a.m. "Gloria, I need to see you urgently. Come to my house as soon as you can and don't tell anyone you're coming." "Are you okay? You're scaring me." "I'm perfectly fine, but I think my dear family is trying to kill me slowly." 40 minutes later, Gloria was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and listening to the whole story of the ticket. Her eyes filled with tears when I showed her the papers. "I can't believe it," she whispered, shaking her head. "How can they be so cruel? You're their mother, Diane. You gave them everything." "Exactly. I gave them everything. The 3 houses my husband and I bought with so much effort, the business we built from scratch, the loans they never repaid, Melissa's college education. And now they want to get rid of me like I'm trash." Gloria squeezed my hand. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, but I need your help." "Count on me for anything. I need you to call Gus, my lawyer. Tell him to come this afternoon, that it's urgent, and not to mention to anyone that he was here." Gus had been my husband's lawyer for 20 years, an honourable man who knew all the details of my properties and my business. When he arrived that afternoon, his face filled with indignation as he listened to my story. "It's incredible, Diane, but I'm not completely surprised. Mark came to my office 2 months ago asking about your will and how long the inheritance process would take if something happened to you." I felt as if I'd been hit in the stomach with a hammer. "Mark went to see you?" "Yes. I told him I couldn't discuss your legal matters with him, but he kept insisting. He wanted to know if the properties would automatically pass to Jasmine as your only daughter." "That bastard," I muttered under my breath. They had it all calculated. "What do you want to do?" Gus asked, pulling out his portfolio. "I want you to prepare all the necessary documents to transfer the 3 properties into a trust in Gloria's name. I also want to put the business up for sale immediately, but discreetly. And I need you to move all my money into accounts they can't touch." "That's going to take several days, maybe a week." "Perfect. I have exactly 1 week before the flight." The next few days were a roller coaster of feigned emotions and secret activity. During the day, I acted like the excited grandma preparing for the trip of a lifetime. Jasmine came over every day to help me pack, but I noticed her eyes scanning my house, calculating how much each piece of furniture, each painting, each ornament was worth. "Mum, have you decided what you're going to do with the keys to the rental houses while you're away?" she asked me on Tuesday, trying to sound casual. "Oh, you're right. I completely forgot," I lied perfectly. "Could you take care of it? You know the tenants, right?" "Of course, Mum. Don't you worry about a thing." Liar. I could already see her raising the rents and keeping the extra money. Mark also increased his visits. On Wednesday, he arrived with a folder full of papers. "Diane, since we'll be handling your things while you're away, we need you to sign some documents, just as a precaution, in case of emergencies." I reviewed the papers carefully. They were documents that basically gave him legal power over my bank accounts and properties. That's very thoughtful of you, Mark, but my lawyer advised me not to sign anything before the trip. He says it could complicate things with taxes. His smile vanished for a second before returning, more forced than before. Of course, of course, we just wanted to help. Meanwhile, Gloria and Gus worked like ants. By Wednesday night, the 3 properties had been transferred to the trust. On Thursday, there was a buyer interested in my business, willing to pay $150,000 in cash. By Friday, all my money was in offshore accounts that neither Jasmine nor Mark could ever find. But the real revelation came Friday night. Jasmine had come to have dinner with me one last time before the trip. I cooked her favorite chicken dish, and we acted like a loving mother and daughter. After dinner, she excused herself to go to the bathroom but headed to my bedroom instead. I followed her in silence. I found her rummaging through my desk, looking at my personal papers. "Looking for something in particular, honey?" I asked from the doorway. She startled and dropped some documents. "Oh, Mum, you scared me. I just wanted to see if you had all your important travel documents organized." "How thoughtful of you." But when she left, I checked what she had been touching. She had been looking for my will and the property deeds. The key to my bank's safe deposit box was also missing. That night I called Gloria. "There's no doubt now," I told her. "They're planning to steal everything while I'm in Australia. They probably hope I'll die there, alone, without money, and with no way to get back." "It's awful, Diane. How can they be so evil?" "Because they think I'm a dumb, helpless old woman, but tomorrow they're going to find out how wrong they are." "What are you going to do?" "Tomorrow is Saturday. My flight is on Sunday. They're all going to come to say goodbye at the airport, pretending they love me and are going to miss me. It'll be the perfect moment for my little surprise." "Are you going to take the flight?" "Of course not. But they're not going to know that until the last minute." Saturday night, I packed a small suitcase with a few clothes and personal items I really wanted to keep. The rest of my things would stay in the house, but I didn't care anymore. Things can be replaced. Dignity and self-respect cannot. I put all the legal documents Gus had prepared in my carry-on bag. The property transfers, the business sale contracts, the bank statements from the new accounts. Everything was there, waiting for the perfect moment. I also wrote a letter, a long letter explaining exactly what I had discovered, what I had done, and why. I put it in a sealed envelope with Jasmine's name written on the front. I slept better that night than I had in years. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my own life. I was no longer the helpless victim they thought I was. I was a 69-year-old woman who had decided to fight for her dignity. Sunday dawned sunny and beautiful. Jasmine, Mark, and Melissa arrived early to pick me up and take me to the airport. They all acted like the perfect family, full of love and sadness about my departure. "Are you excited, Mum?" Jasmine asked as we got in the car. "More than you can imagine, honey," I replied with a smile she completely misinterpreted. As we drove to the airport, I listened to them talk about what they would do while I was away, how they would maintain my house, how they would take care of my things. Every word was another stab in my heart, but it also fueled the flame of my determination. They didn't know that in an hour, their lives would change forever. The airport was full of families saying goodbye with genuine tears in their eyes, couples hugging as if it were the last time they would see each other, kids crying because their grandparents were going on a trip. And there we were, the perfect family, performing the cruelest charade I had ever witnessed in my 69 years of life. Melissa kept recording everything on her phone, documenting every moment of my emotional farewell. Jasmine kept hugging me and telling me how much she would miss me, while Mark carried my suitcase with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was all so fake it made me want to vomit. "Mum, promise me you'll call us every day," Jasmine said, squeezing my hands. Her eyes were moist, but I knew they weren't tears of sadness, but of relief. "We want to know you're well, that you're happy." "Of course, honey, I'll call you every day." I lied with the same ease she had been lying to me all week. Mark came closer and gave me a hug that lasted too long, as if he were performing for his daughter's camera. Diane, I want you to know that Jasmine and I are going to take care of everything as if it were our own. Your house, your properties, your business, everything will be perfect when you return. Oh, I'm sure of that, I replied, looking him straight in the eyes. I'm completely sure you'll take care of everything exactly as you would with your own. He didn't catch the sarcasm in my voice. He was too stupid for that. Grandma, we're going to miss you so much, Melissa said, finally putting her phone away to give me a hug. She was the only one who seemed to have a little genuine remorse in her eyes. Really, are you going to be okay out there alone? For a moment, my heart softened. Melissa was young, influenced by her parents. Maybe she didn't fully understand what they were doing. But then I remembered she had been recording everything, documenting my happiness to have evidence that I had accepted the trip voluntarily. I'm going to be perfectly fine, my love, I told her, stroking her cheek. In fact, I think this trip is going to be exactly what I need. It's time to check in, Jasmine announced, looking at her watch with suspicious urgency. We don't want you to miss the flight. No, of course they didn't want me to miss the flight. They had planned everything too well for anything to go wrong. We walked toward the airline counter. I walked slowly, dragging my feet like a frail old lady who needed help. In reality, I was buying time, waiting for the perfect moment for my big revelation. Next, the counter agent shouted. I approached with my ticket in hand, followed closely by my loving family. The agent, a young woman with a professional smile, checked my documents. Ms. Diane, I see you have a one-way ticket to Sydney. Do you have your return ticket yet? The silence that followed was deafening. Jasmine and Mark exchanged a quick glance, like two criminals who had just been caught. No, I replied slowly, feigning confusion. My family told me they would take care of the return ticket when I decided to come back. The agent frowned. Mum, to enter Australia on a tourist visa, you need to show you have sufficient funds for your stay and a confirmed return ticket. It's immigration policy. I felt the blood in my veins run cold, but not from fear, from a cold, calculated rage. These bastards hadn't even bothered to investigate the basic requirements to send me to Australia. They wanted to get rid of me so desperately that they had made stupid mistakes. What does that mean? I asked, turning to Jasmine with the eyes of a confused old woman. Don't worry, Mark quickly intervened, approaching the counter. We bought the return tickets separately. We just need to make a quick call to confirm the details. Liar! There was no return ticket because they never intended for me to come back. Sir, if you don't have a confirmed return ticket right now, I can't process the check-in, the agent said in a firm voice. It's airline policy and an Australian immigration requirement. Melissa had stopped recording. Jasmine looked as pale as a ghost. Mark was sweating as if he'd just run a marathon. Their perfect plan was falling apart before their eyes. You know what? I said loudly, loud enough for other people in the line to hear me. I think there's something I'm not understanding correctly here. I turned to my family with a look that no longer feigned confusion, but showed the sharp intelligence I had been hiding all week. Jasmine, my dear daughter, can you explain why you bought a one-way ticket? Why didn't you check the immigration requirements? Why do I have the feeling you never expected me to return? Mum, don't be ridiculous, Jasmine stammered, but her voice was breaking. It was just a mistake. We can fix it. A mistake? I repeated, taking out my carry-on bag. Like Mark's mistake when he went to ask my lawyer about my will 2 months ago. Mark's face turned the colour of ash. I never... Or like yesterday's mistake when I found you rummaging through my desk, Jasmine, looking for the deeds to my properties. Mum, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything, honey, because I already understood everything perfectly. I took the letter I had written the night before and handed it to Jasmine. Her hands trembled as she took it. What is this? She whispered. Open it and read it out loud so that everyone in this line can hear exactly what kind of family you are. I won't. Open it! I yelled with a voice I hadn't used in years, a voice that made several people turn to look at us. Read it out loud, Jasmine. Read to everyone how you plan to get rid of your mother." With trembling hands, Jasmine opened the envelope. Her eyes scanned the first lines of the letter and filled with tears. But they weren't tears of regret. They were of pure terror. "I can't," she murmured. "Then I will," I said, snatching the letter from her hands. "My dear family," I began to read aloud, "after 69 years in this world, I have finally understood that you never loved me. You only wanted my money, my properties, and my death." The people around us stopped what they were doing and turned to listen. Melissa started crying. Mark looked like he was about to faint. "This one-way ticket to Australia is not a gift. It's a death sentence disguised as a dream. You hoped I would die alone, without money, in a foreign country, so you could take everything my husband and I built during 40 years of marriage." "Mum, stop!" Jasmine pleaded, trying to take the letter from me. "People are looking." "Let them look," I shouted. "Let them see exactly what kind of daughter I had the misfortune of raising. Let them know there are families that are worse than enemies." I continued reading. "But it turns out your mother isn't as dumb as you thought. While you were planning my funeral, I was planning your ruin." Jasmine fainted. She literally fainted and fell to the airport floor. Mark knelt beside her, screaming her name, while Melissa cried hysterically. The counteragent had called security, but I kept reading my letter as if nothing had happened. After all, I had been rehearsing this moment for a week. "The 3 properties you coveted so much no longer belong to me. I transferred them to a trust in my sister Gloria's name. The business you thought you would inherit has already been sold, and all my money is in accounts you can never touch." Mark looked up from the floor with the unconscious Jasmine in his arms. His eyes showed a mixture of hatred and desperation that gave me immense satisfaction. "You gave me a ticket to hell," I continued, calmly folding the letter. "I'm giving you a ticket to reality, a reality where you'll have to work for the first time in your lives, where you won't have anyone to steal from, where you'll finally know what it means to be alone." The paramedics had arrived and were attending to Jasmine. The crowd surrounded us, all whispering and pointing. Melissa was still crying, but now I understood they weren't tears for my departure, but for her ruined future. I walked over to Mark, who was still on the floor, holding his unconscious wife. "You know what the funniest part of all this is?" I whispered in his ear. "I'm actually going on a trip, but not to Australia. I'm going to live with Gloria at her house in the mountains, where I'll spend my last years surrounded by genuine love." His eyes filled with tears of rage, frustration, and total defeat. "And you," I continued, "you're going to have to explain to your creditors why you can't pay them. You're going to have to find a real job. You're going to have to live like normal people for the first time in your life." I stood up, grabbed my suitcase, and headed for the airport exit. Gloria was waiting for me outside in her car, just as we had planned. Before I left, I turned one last time toward my shattered family on the airport floor. "May you have a life as beautiful as your hearts," I yelled. "Goodbye forever." As I walked toward the exit, my suitcase rolling behind me, and the echo of Mark's desperate screams ringing in my ears, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: absolute freedom. Every step I took away from that family of vipers was a step toward a new life, toward the dignity I had lost without realizing it. Gloria was waiting for me in the parking lot, just as we had agreed. When she saw me come out, her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of pride. She ran toward me and hugged me as if she had been waiting for that moment her whole life. "How do you feel?" she asked, taking my suitcase and helping me into the car. "Like I've been resurrected," I replied, closing the car door with a satisfaction that filled me from head to toe, as if the last 5 years had been just a nightmare, and I've finally woken up. As Gloria drove toward her house in the mountains, I couldn't stop thinking about the looks on Jasmine's and Mark's faces when they realized their perfect plan had become their total undoing. The expression of shock, disbelief, and absolute horror when they understood that the dumb old woman they thought they could fool had turned out to be smarter than them. "Do you think they'll try to fight it legally?" Gloria asked as we drove up the winding mountain road. "Let them try," I replied with a smile that probably looked devilish. "Gus made sure everything is perfectly legal. The property transfers have all the necessary signatures, all the correct dates, all the official seals. The business sale was done at market price with a legitimate buyer. There's absolutely nothing they can do." But as I said those words, my mind began to travel to the past, remembering how I had gotten to this point, when exactly my own daughter had become my enemy, at what moment I had stopped being her mother and become her victim. The first time I noticed something was wrong was 3 years after my husband's death. Jasmine had come home crying because Mark had lost another job. They needed $5,000 to pay urgent debts or the bank was going to take their house. I, as always, helped them without asking questions, but after giving them the money, I started to notice small changes. Jasmine stopped visiting me regularly. When she did come, it was always because she needed something. Money to fix the car, money for Melissa's college, money for medical expenses she never showed me. And I, being the loving mother I was, always said yes. "Do you remember when Jasmine was a little girl?" I asked Gloria as we passed through a mountain town full of houses with red roofs and flower gardens. "Do you remember what she was like before she married Mark?" "She was a sweet girl," Gloria replied sadly. "She was always attached to you. She always wanted to help you in the kitchen. She always brought you flowers she had cut from the garden." "What happened to her?" "Mark happened to her," I said bitterly. "That man poisoned her from day one. He put it in her head that I had too much money, that it was unfair that an old woman like me had 3 properties while they struggled to pay 1 mortgage. He made her believe I owed them everything I had." I remembered a conversation I had overheard by chance 2 years ago when Jasmine thought I was asleep in my armchair. She was talking on the phone with Mark, planning how to convince me to lend them money for a business that never existed. "The old lady's asleep," she had said in a low voice. "I think we can get another $10,000 from her. I'll tell her it's for Melissa's medical treatment." Melissa had never been sick, but I gave them the money anyway, pretending I hadn't heard anything, hoping that maybe I was wrong, that maybe my daughter wasn't capable of lying to me so blatantly. How naive I had been. "You know what hurts the most?" I said to Gloria as we arrived at her beautiful country house, surrounded by pine trees with a spectacular view of the valley. "It's not the money they stole from me for years. It's not the properties they wanted to take from me. It's that they made me feel like I was a burden, as if my only function in life was to give them money and then conveniently disappear." Gloria parked the car and turned to me with tear-filled eyes. "Diane, you were never a burden. You were the best mother any daughter could have. Jasmine just became someone who doesn't deserve your love." That night, sitting on the terrace of Gloria's house, sipping chamomile tea and looking at the stars, I allowed myself to cry for the first time in years. I wasn't crying for Jasmine or for Mark or even for Melissa. I was crying for the woman I had been before I became a victim of my own generosity. I was crying for all the years I had spent justifying their behavior, inventing excuses for their lies, pretending I didn't see the obvious signs that I was being used. I was crying for the loving mother who had raised a daughter capable of planning her abandonment in a foreign country, but I was also crying with relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about who was going to knock on my door asking for a loan. I didn't have to pretend I didn't know they were lying to me. I didn't have to carry the weight of a family that saw me as a walking bank account. "Do you regret anything?" Gloria asked, sitting down next to me with her own cup of tea. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "I regret waiting so long to do this. I regret being so blind, so naive. I regret giving them so much power over my life." "But you don't regret what you did today?" "Not at all. What I did today, I should have done years ago. The problem is, you always hope that family will change, that they'll wake up, that they'll remember they love you, but some bones are so rotten that no medicine can cure them. The next day, Gus arrived early with news that made me smile for the first time in days. "Diane, I have some information about your dear family," he said, sitting down in Gloria's living room with a folder full of documents. "Mark went to the bank yesterday afternoon trying to access your accounts. When they told him the accounts had been closed, he made a scene that almost ended with the police arresting him." "Really?" I asked, feeling a delicious satisfaction course through my veins. "But that's not all. He also went to the real estate office where you handled your property rentals. When they told him you were no longer the owner, he screamed so much that the neighbours called the police, thinking it was a robbery." Gloria laughed until she cried. "I can't believe it. He really thought he could just take control of everything that easily." "Apparently so," Gus continued, "and here's the best part. Jasmine came to my office this morning threatening to sue me for fraud. I explained that everything we did was completely legal with your authorization and that you were of sound mind when you signed the documents. She left screaming that this wasn't going to end here." "Let her scream all she wants," I said calmly. "Screaming isn't going to give her back the money she already mentally spent." "Is there anything else?" Gus added with a mischievous smile. "I took the liberty of investigating Mark's financial situation a bit. It turns out he owes more than $50,000 in credit cards, personal loans, and his home mortgage. He was apparently hoping to use your money to pay for everything." I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Not only had I escaped their clutches, but I had left them in a desperate financial situation. Poetic justice at its finest. "Do you know what this means?" I said to Gloria after Gus left. "It means that for the first time in years, I'm going to be able to sleep in peace, knowing that my money is being used for my happiness, not to support a family of parasites." "And what are you going to do now?" she asked me. "I'm going to live," I replied with a determination I hadn't felt in decades. "I'm going to travel, but to places I choose. I'm going to spend my money on things that make me happy. I'm going to surround myself with people who love me for real, not people who love my bank account." "And if Jasmine tries to contact you, if she comes to ask for forgiveness?" "She won't," I replied with absolute certainty. "Because in her twisted mind, I'm the villain in this story. I'm the selfish mother who refused to sacrifice her life for her family's well-being. But if she does," I continued, "then I'm going to tell her exactly what I told her at the airport. May you have a life as beautiful as your heart." That afternoon, while organising my few belongings in the room Gloria had prepared for me, I found an old photo of Jasmine when she was 5 years old. She was sitting on my lap, smiling with genuine happiness, hugging me as if I were the most valuable thing in her world. I looked at it for long minutes, remembering the sweet girl who had disappeared forever. Then, without a tear, I tore it into small pieces and threw it in the trash. Some people die before they were buried. My daughter had died years ago, the day she decided my love was worth less than my money. A week after my great escape from the airport, life at Gloria's house had settled into a rhythm I hadn't experienced in years. I woke up when my body wanted to wake up, not when the phone rang with some new financial emergency from Jasmine. I ate breakfast peacefully on the terrace, watching the birds and listening to the wind in the pine trees, without having to worry about who was going to knock on my door asking for a loan. It was a peace I had forgotten existed. But Gus arrived on Tuesday morning with news that reminded me the war wasn't completely over. "Diane, we have to talk," he said, sitting in the kitchen with a serious expression I hadn't seen before. "Jasmine and Mark have hired a lawyer." "Really?" I asked, pouring coffee as if he had told me it was going to rain. "With what money? I thought they were bankrupt." "Apparently they borrowed money. The lawyer's name is Felix Mitchell, and he doesn't have a very good reputation. He's one of those who takes desperate cases, hoping for a big percentage if they win." "And what exactly do they plan to do?" "They're going to allege that the property transfers were made under emotional coercion. They're going to say you weren't of sound mind when you signed the documents." I laughed so hard that Gloria came running out of her room, thinking something had happened to me. Sound mind, I repeated between laughs. The woman who figured out their plan before they even knew she'd found out wasn't of sound mind. Diane, it's not funny, Gus warned me. These kinds of lawsuits can be problematic, especially when they involve elderly people and large property transfers. Judges are sometimes sympathetic to children who allege their parents were manipulated. Manipulated, I exploded, getting up from the chair so fast I almost knocked it over. I was the one who was manipulated for years. They were the ones who lied to me, stole from me, and tried to abandon me in another country. I know, but they're going to tell a different story. They're going to say you were a loving grandmother who wanted to go on a trip and that I convinced you to transfer everything before you left. They're going to paint me as the unscrupulous lawyer who took advantage of a vulnerable widow. Gloria sat down next to me and took my hand. What can we do? We can win, Gus said with a smile that immediately calmed me down. Because I have something they don't know I have. What? Recordings. The silence that followed was deafening. Gloria and I looked at each other as if we hadn't heard correctly. Recordings of what? I finally asked. Remember when Mark came to my office 2 months ago asking about your will? Well, all consultations in my office are automatically recorded for security. I have 45 minutes of Mark specifically asking how long the inheritance process would take, if something happened to you, how much your properties were worth, and if there was any way to speed up the transfer. I felt as if I had been given a Christmas present in July. And that's legal? Gloria asked. Completely legal. There's a sign in my office that states conversations may be recorded. Mark saw it, even asked about it, and I explained it was for security. He agreed to continue the conversation. What else is on that recording? I asked, feeling an excitement I hadn't experienced since the day at the airport. Mark asking if there was any way to have you declared mentally incompetent to speed up the process. Asking if a prolonged trip abroad could be interpreted as abandonment of properties. He was specifically asking about Australia and the immigration requirements. Gloria put her hands to her mouth. My God, they had it all planned out for months. Not only that, Gus continued, I also have the phone records of the calls I made to arrange the transfers, all made at your explicit request, with your voice clearly identifiable authorizing each move. That will be enough, more than enough. But there's something else you can do to ensure total victory. Tell me, Melissa, what about Melissa? She recorded everything at the airport, the whole scene, the whole confession, Jasmine's whole collapse. And according to my sources, she's starting to question her parents. How do you know that? Because she came to my office yesterday. The world stopped. Gloria stopped breathing. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. Melissa came to see you. Why? She wanted to talk to me about what happened at the airport. According to her, her parents told her you had a mental episode, that you destroyed the family because of a manipulative lawyer. But she saw your face that day, Diane. She saw the lucidity in your eyes, the determination, the planning. There's no way what you did was the work of a confused mind. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. I showed her the documents that prove everything was done legally. I explained that you discovered their plan and decided to protect yourself, and I asked her if she really believed that a grandmother who loved her family would try to ruin them without a very serious reason. And what did she say? She cried. She cried for an hour. She told me there were things she didn't understand, conversations she had overheard between her parents that were now starting to make sense. She said that when she recorded the video at the airport, she thought she was documenting a beautiful moment of farewell, but when she reviewed the footage, she realized she had recorded something completely different. Is she going to testify for us? I don't know yet. She's confused, scared, caught between her parents and the truth. But the fact that she came to see me means she has doubts, and doubts in a case like this can be very powerful. I couldn't sleep that night, not out of anxiety or fear, but because of a strange energy coursing through my body. It was as if I had woken up after years of being asleep, as if I had finally recovered not only my money, but my personal power. I got up and went to the terrace, where I sat and watched the stars and thought about everything that had happened. A month ago, I was a 69-year-old widow who felt like a burden to her family. Today, I was a free woman who had regained complete control of her life. The difference wasn't just the money or the properties. The difference was that I was no longer a victim of anyone. Gloria came out to the terrace in her robe, worried to find me awake. "You can't sleep?" she asked, sitting down next to me. "I don't want to sleep," I replied. "I want to savor this moment. I want to remember exactly what it feels like to be in control of my own life." "Are you afraid of the lawsuit?" "Not at all. Let them sue all they want. Let them invent all the stories they can think of. Let them bring all the lawyers in the world. The truth is on our side, the recordings are on our side, and apparently even their own daughter is starting to be on our side. And if Melissa decides to testify against them, then we'll know exactly what kind of person she is. But something tells me she won't. There's a difference between being influenced by your parents and being completely corrupt. Melissa was raised by Jasmine, but she also had grandparents who loved her for real. Some of that has to have stuck. Would you forgive her if she came to ask for forgiveness?" "That's a very difficult question," I admitted, thinking about Melissa's face when she realized it had all been a lie. She's young, she was manipulated, and at the end of the day, she's my granddaughter. But she also actively participated in the plan to abandon me. I don't know if that's something that can be forgiven easily. And Jasmine is dead to me. The day she decided my life was worth less than my money, she ceased to be my daughter. There's no coming back from that. The next day, Gus called with news that changed everything. "Diane, you're not going to believe this. Melissa just brought me the complete video from the airport. Not just the part we saw, but also recordings of conversations between Jasmine and Mark before you arrived. The idiots forgot she was still recording." "What kind of conversations?" "Mark telling Jasmine that once you were on the plane, they had to act fast to transfer the properties. Jasmine responding that she already had the keys to your safe deposit box and they could empty it that same afternoon. Both of them laughing about how easy it had been to fool you. The rage I felt at that moment was so intense that I had to sit down so I wouldn't faint. Melissa heard all that, yes, and she finally understood that her parents are not the victims in this story. 2 days after the discovery of Melissa's recordings, my life took another turn I wasn't expecting. It was Thursday morning when I heard a car coming up the gravel drive to Gloria's house. I looked out the window and saw a car I didn't recognize, but when the door opened, my heart stopped. Melissa got out of the car alone, her eyes red from crying, with a small suitcase in her hand. She looked like she had aged 10 years in the 2 weeks that had passed since the airport. "Gloria!" I yelled to my sister. "Melissa is here." Gloria ran to the window and saw my granddaughter walking slowly toward the front door as if every step took superhuman effort. "What do I do?" I asked, feeling a mixture of emotions I didn't know how to handle. Part of me wanted to run and hug her. Another part wanted to scream at her for having participated in her parents' plan. "Listen to her," Gloria advised me. "Just listen to her." When I opened the door, Melissa collapsed in my arms, crying as I hadn't seen her cry since she was a small child. For a moment, I remembered the baby I had cared for when Jasmine had to work, the girl who would come running to hug me every time I arrived at my house. "Grandma," she sobbed against my shoulder. "Forgive me, please forgive me." I took her inside and sat her on Gloria's sofa. Her hands trembled as she tried to wipe away the tears that wouldn't stop falling. "Where are your parents?" I asked, offering her a glass of water. "I don't know, and I don't care," she replied with a bitterness that surprised me coming from her. "I left home this morning and I'm never going back." "What happened?" "I found something, Grandma. Something that made me understand that everything they told me about you was a lie." Melissa took out her phone and showed me a series of text messages between Jasmine and Mark. I read them in silence, feeling the little hope I had of getting my daughter back completely vanish. The messages were from 3 months ago, long before the Australia ticket. Jasmine, have you found out how much Mum's big house is worth yet? Mark, the appraiser says it's worth at least $180,000. The other two are about $120,000 each. Jasmine, and the business? Mark, easily $200,000 if it sells quickly. In total, we're talking about more than $600,000. Jasmine, we have to act soon. Mum is very healthy for her age. She could live another 20 years. Mark, that's why I like your trip idea. It's perfect. No one will suspect a thing. There was more? I asked, returning the phone with trembling hands. Yes, a lot more. Messages about how they were going to convince you to sign a power of attorney before the trip. Conversations about what they were going to do with your money once you were in Australia. They even talked about changing the locks on your house so you couldn't get back in, even if you found a way. Gloria put her hands to her mouth. My God, how could they plan something so cruel? That's not the worst part, Melissa continued, her voice breaking again. I also found invoices from a private investigation company. Mark had hired someone to find out exactly how much money you had, what properties you owned, and if you had any hidden debts. I sat in silence for several minutes, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. It hadn't been an improvised plan born of financial desperation. It had been a calculated, cold operation, planned for months to steal everything my husband and I had built in 40 years of marriage. Why are you showing me this? I finally asked Melissa. Because when I saw those messages, I understood that you are not the villain in this story. Because I realized that my parents are not the good people I thought they were. And why... She broke down again. Because I need you to know that I didn't know any of this. I genuinely thought we were giving you a beautiful surprise. I swear on Grandpa's memory that I didn't know anything. They told me they had been saving for months to buy you the ticket. They told me it was your lifelong dream. They told me you were going to be the happiest grandma in the world. And the fact that it was one way didn't seem strange to you. They told me it was so you would have total freedom, so you wouldn't feel pressured to come back on a specific date. It sounded so considerate, so loving. Her tears started falling again. I'm an idiot, Grandma, a complete idiot. You're not an idiot, I said, taking her hands in mine. You're young, and you trusted your parents like any daughter would. The problem isn't your innocence, it's their malice. Can you forgive me? That question hung in the air for what felt like an eternity. I looked at my granddaughter, this young 20-year-old who had been manipulated as much as I had, and I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in her mother's eyes for years. Genuine regret. I can forgive you, I finally said, but I need you to understand something. Forgiveness doesn't mean things are going to go back to how they were before. Too much damage has been done for that. I understand. I just needed you to know the truth, and I needed to apologize. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I can't go back to that house. I can't live with people who are capable of planning something so horrible against their own family, but I also don't know where to go. Gloria came closer and sat on the other side of Melissa. You can stay here while you decide what to do. I don't want to be a burden. You wouldn't be a burden, I interrupted. But you would be a guest, not family, at least not yet. Trust has been lost, and it's going to take time to rebuild it. I understand perfectly. That afternoon, while Melissa slept in the guest room, Gus arrived with news that completed the picture of Jasmine and Mark's betrayal. Diane, he said, I just got a very interesting call. He sat in the kitchen with a smile that promised good news. Remember Diana, the accountant who handled your business finances? Of course, she worked with me for 10 years. Well, it turns out Mark went to see her last week, trying to convince her to give him access to the business's financial records. He told her you'd had a mental episode and that he needed to review the accounts to protect the family's interests. And what did she do? What any ethical professional would do. She told him to get lost and called me immediately to report the incident. Good for Diana. But there's more. Alan, your tenant from the house on Elm Street, also called me. He said Mark went to see him yesterday, telling him the properties had been transferred to him and he needed to start paying rent directly to him. What did Alan say? He told him that until he saw official documents signed by you, he wasn't going to change who he paid the rent to. Mark got furious and yelled that you no longer owned anything. These idiots don't give up. On the contrary, this is perfect for us. Every desperate move they make is more evidence that they knew exactly what they were doing. A judge is going to see this pattern of behavior and will immediately understand that they were not victims of any manipulation. When do you think they'll file the official lawsuit? According to my sources, their lawyer, Felix, is trying to convince them to back down. He's told them they don't have a case, but they're so desperate they don't want to listen. And if they go ahead with it, then we'll destroy them in court. Between the recordings from my office, Melissa's videos, the text messages, and the testimonies of Diana and Alan, they won't have the slightest chance of winning. That night, having dinner with Gloria and Melissa, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I was surrounded by people who loved me for who I was, not for what I had. Gloria, who had set aside her normal routine to take care of me without expecting anything in return. Melissa, who had risked her relationship with her parents to do the right thing. You know what? I said to Melissa as I served dessert. I think your grandfather would be proud of you. Really? He always said that a person's character is revealed in difficult times. You had to choose between the comfort of continuing to live a lie and the difficulty of facing the truth. You chose the truth. It cost a lot. The things that are worth it always cost a lot. 2 days later, Felix Mitchell, Jasmine and Mark's lawyer, called Gus to inform him that his clients had decided to withdraw the lawsuit. Apparently, when Felix saw all the evidence we had against them, he warned them that they not only would lose the case, but they could face criminal charges for attempted fraud. The war was over, and I had won. 3 weeks after Felix withdrew the lawsuit, my life had taken a turn I never imagined. At 69, I woke up every morning without the weight of family betrayal crushing my chest, without the anxiety of wondering when the phone would ring with another invented financial emergency, without the constant feeling of being a golden goose for a family of vultures. Melissa had stayed at Gloria's house, and we were slowly rebuilding a relationship based on genuine honesty, not on family obligation. It was strange, but in a way, I knew my granddaughter better now than I did when I was living the lie of being part of a united family. "Grandma," she said to me one morning as we had breakfast on the terrace, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Don't you miss anything about your old life? Anything about Mum?" The question hit me as it always did when I thought about Jasmine. I didn't miss the woman she had become, but I did miss the girl she had been, the daughter I thought I had raised. "I miss the person I thought your mother was," I replied with honesty. "I miss the daughter who existed in my imagination, the one who loved me for real and not just for convenience, but I can't miss someone who maybe never really existed." Do you think there's any chance that they'll realize what they did and try to fix it? Melissa, there are 2 types of people in this world. Those who make mistakes because they're human, and those who do evil because it's their nature. Your mother and Mark didn't make a mistake. They planned for months to steal everything from me and abandon me in a foreign country. You don't fix that with an apology. I know. It's just that it's hard to accept that my parents are really so evil. It's easier to accept when you understand that recognizing their evil doesn't make you a bad daughter. It just makes you someone who chooses the truth over fantasy. Gus arrived that afternoon with news I wasn't expecting. "Diane, I have information about your dear ex-family," he said, sitting in the living room with an expression that mixed amusement and satisfaction. "Do you want to hear how they're doing in their new life without your money?" "Tell me everything." I'll start with the best part. The bank foreclosed on their house yesterday. Apparently, they had gone 4 months without paying the mortgage, hoping to use your money to catch up. They're homeless, Melissa asked with wide eyes. Completely homeless. They had to move into a small apartment in the cheapest part of town. And when I say small, I mean it has 1 bedroom for the 2 of them. I felt a satisfaction that bordered on the diabolical. What else? Mark finally got a job. Guess where? Tell me. At a warehouse loading boxes, night shift, minimum wage. The same man who 2 months ago thought he owned properties worth $600,000 is now earning tens an hour. Gloria laughed until she cried. It's too perfect. And Jasmine had to take a job cleaning houses. Poetic justice. The woman who wanted to inherit 3 houses is now cleaning other people's houses for money. How did you find all this out? I asked. Diana, your former accountant, ran into Jasmine at the supermarket. She says she looked terrible, as if she had aged 10 years in a month. When Diana asked her how she was, Jasmine broke down crying right there in the cereal aisle. What did she tell her? She said it was all your fault, that you had destroyed the family out of pure selfishness, that you had chosen your sister over your own daughter, that she didn't understand how you could have been so cruel to the people who loved you. The rage I felt at that moment was so intense that I had to count to 10 to keep from yelling. She still believes she's the victim, Melissa asked incredulously. Completely. In her twisted mind, you 2 are the villains who destroyed an innocent family that only wanted to help their matriarch fulfill her dream. It's unbelievable, Gloria murmured. After everything they did, after being caught with irrefutable evidence, they still believe they are the victims. That's the difference between a person who makes mistakes and a person who is genuinely evil, I explained to them. Good people, when they're caught doing something wrong, feel shame and regret. Evil people only feel rage for having been discovered. Have you thought about contacting her? Gus asked me, giving her a chance to apologize. For what? So she can lie to me again? So she can try to manipulate me with fake tears? No, Gus. That woman is dead to me. The day she decided my life was worth less than my money, she signed her own family death sentence. That night, after Gus left, I sat on the terrace to reflect on everything that had happened. 6 weeks ago, I was a victim who didn't know she was a victim. Today, I was a free woman who had not only regained her dignity, but her personal power. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Gloria answered it, and after a few minutes, she came over to me with a strange expression. Diane, it was Renee, your neighbour from the old house. She says Jasmine has been hanging around your old house trying to get in. What? Apparently, she was seen yesterday evening trying to open the back door. When Renee yelled at her from her window, Jasmine told her it was her house and she had a right to be there. She called the police. Yes. When the officers arrived, Jasmine told them you had lost your mind and that the properties legally belonged to her. They had to show her the transfer documents to convince her to leave. This woman never learns. Renee says she looked desperate. Her clothes were dirty, her hair was dishevelled, and she was acting like a person having a mental breakdown. For the first time since the airport, I felt something close to compassion for Jasmine, not because she didn't deserve what was happening to her, but because she was finally experiencing the consequences of her actions, and obviously didn't know how to handle them. Do you think we should do something? Melissa asked with genuine concern. Like what? Talk to her. Offer her help. Melissa, I said in the softest voice I could muster, I understand you still feel love for your mother. It's normal. She's your daughter after all. But helping someone who doesn't recognize that they need help isn't compassion. It's complicity. What do you mean? If I help her now, if I give her money or offer her a place to live, what message am I sending her? That she can betray me, try to steal from me, plan to abandon me, and still get what she wants from me. But she looks so desperate. She looks desperate because she is finally living with the consequences of her decisions. If I interfere with those consequences, she's never going to learn the lesson. And if something happens to her, then that will be her responsibility, not mine. I'm not her savior, Melissa, not anymore. Gloria came over and put her hand on my shoulder. Diane is right, honey. Your mother is an adult who made adult decisions. Now she has to live with the adult consequences. I know, it's just hard to watch your mum suffer no matter what she's done. Of course it's hard, but you know what would have been harder? Being alone in Australia, without money, with no way to get back, dying slowly while she sold my properties and spent my money. Melissa nodded with tears in her eyes. You're right, I just wish things had been different. Me too, my love, me too. 3 days later, Gus arrived with the final news about Jasmine and Mark. They're leaving, he announced without preamble. They're moving to another state. Apparently they can't handle the social shame of what happened. Where are they going? I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. The important thing is that they're finally going to be out of your life permanently. And how do you feel about that? Gloria asked me. I thought about the question for a long minute. What did I feel? Sadness, relief, satisfaction, regret? I feel peace, I finally replied. For the first time in years, I feel complete peace. And it was true. The war was over, the villains had been defeated, and I had emerged victorious. But more important than the victory was the lesson I had learned. It's never too late to reclaim your personal power, no matter who tries to take it away. 6 months after my great escape from the airport, my life had taken a shape I never imagined possible at 69. It was as if I had been reborn, as if the old Diane had been just a rehearsal for the woman I had become. I was sitting in the garden of my new house, a beautiful property I had bought in the mountains, just 10 minutes from Gloria's house, but independent enough to feel like I had my own space. The money from the sale of the 3 previous properties and the business had allowed me to buy this house outright, without a mortgage, without debt, without commitments to anyone but myself. Melissa lived with me now, not out of economic necessity, but by mutual choice. She had decided to transfer to a nearby university to study business administration, and together we had developed a relationship that was more honest and stronger than anything I had ever had with her mother. "Grandma," she said to me one morning as we drank coffee on the terrace overlooking the valley, "a letter came for you." I took the envelope with curiosity. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but when I saw the sender, my heart stopped for a moment. It was from Jasmine. "Are you going to open it?" Melissa asked, the nervousness evident in her voice. "Of course," I replied, breaking the seal with hands that surprisingly didn't tremble. "After 6 months, I'm curious to know what she has to say." The letter was written on cheap paper with shaky, desperate handwriting. I read it in silence first, feeling a mixture of emotions run through my body. "What does it say?" Melissa asked. "It says she's sorry," I replied with a smile that was not at all happy. "It says she finally understood what she lost. It says Mark left her for a younger woman and that she's now completely alone. It says she needs urgent financial help because she can't pay the rent for her apartment." "And what else?" "It says she always loved me for real, that it was all Mark's idea, that she was just a victim of his manipulations. It says if I give her a chance, she can prove to me that she's still my loving daughter." Melissa was silent for a long minute. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done years ago," I replied, getting up from the chair and walking to the stone fireplace in the garden. I lit a match and held the letter to the fire. The flames licked the paper until it turned to ashes that blew away in the mountain wind. "Is that it?" Melissa asked, surprised. "That's it. There's no answer for someone who still believes they can manipulate me with lies. There's no second chance for someone who only seeks help when they're desperate." "Don't you feel anything? Not even curiosity about how she's really doing?" "I feel pity for her," I admitted. "Pity because she's living exactly the life she chose to live, but I don't feel a responsibility to rescue her from the consequences of her own decisions." That afternoon, Gloria came to visit us with news that completed the picture of Jasmine's new life. Diane, she said, sitting on the terrace with an expression that mixed gossip and satisfaction. I ran into Diana at the supermarket. She has fresh news about your dear ex-daughter. Tell me. It turns out Mark did leave her, but not for a younger woman. He left her because he found the text messages where Jasmine told a friend that the whole Australia plan had been her idea from the beginning. Really? Apparently, Jasmine was painting herself as the innocent victim, manipulated by her evil husband, but she had messages where she bragged about convincing Mark that the plan would work. When he saw those messages, he realized she was using him as a scapegoat. Poetic justice, I murmured. But there's more. Mark not only left her, but he left with all the little money they had left. Jasmine was literally left with nothing. And what is she doing now? Working double shifts cleaning offices at night and houses during the day. Diana says she looks terrible, that she has lost a lot of weight, that she looks 10 years older. Do you feel sorry for her? Melissa asked me. No, I replied without hesitation. I feel satisfaction. For the first time in her adult life, she's experiencing what it means to work for money instead of manipulating to get it. Do you think she'll learn her lesson? Frankly, I don't care if she learns it or not. It's no longer my problem. Gus arrived an hour later with even more interesting news. Diane, guess who came to my office this morning? Jasmine. Exactly. She arrived crying, telling me she needed my help to contact you, that she had made mistakes, but that she deserved a second chance. What did you tell her? I told her you had been very clear that you wanted no contact with her, that any letters she sent would be returned unopened, that phone calls would be blocked, and that any attempt to physically approach you would be considered harassment. How did she react? As expected, first she tried to manipulate me with tears, then she got furious and yelled at me that I had destroyed her family. Finally, she left, threatening to find a way to contact you no matter what it took. Do you think she'll try something? It's possible. Desperation makes people make stupid decisions, but I've already taken precautions. I hired a security company to maintain discreet surveillance on your house and Gloria's. Is it necessary? Probably not. But after everything that's happened, I'd rather be safe. That night, while having dinner with Melissa, I realized something that filled me with a deep and lasting satisfaction. You know what the most beautiful thing about all of this is? I said to my granddaughter as I served dessert. What? That for the first time in years, when I sit down for dinner, I don't have to worry about the phone ringing with some invented emergency. I don't have to calculate how much money your mother's next visit is going to cost me. I don't have to pretend I believe her lies. Don't you miss anything from before? I miss the illusion of having a united family, but I prefer the reality of having a small but genuine family 1,000 times over the fantasy of having a big but fake family. Do you consider me genuine family? I consider you proof that it's possible to salvage something good from a bad situation. Your mother and Mark taught me that there are people capable of betraying their own family for money. You taught me that there are people capable of choosing truth over convenience. Thanks, Grandma. Don't thank me. You saved yourself when you decided to show me those text messages. You chose to do the right thing when it would have been easier to stay quiet. 2 weeks later, Gus brought me the final news about Jasmine. She's gone again, he announced, this time to another country. Apparently she got a job as a live-in maid for a family in Costa Rica. A live-in maid? Yes, she lives in a small room in her employer's house. She works 6 days a week. She has 1 day off a month. Basically, the exact opposite life to the one she wanted to have. How did you find out? She contacted me before she left, asking me to tell you that she was leaving the country, but that someday she would return to fix things with you. Did you respond? I told her you had been very clear. There's nothing to fix because for you, she no longer exists. How did she react? She cried for 10 minutes. Then she told me this wasn't over, that she was going to find a way to get her family back. Poor woman, I said, and for the first time in months, I really felt pity for Jasmine. She still doesn't understand that she didn't lose her family, she sold it. Do you think she'll ever truly understand what she did? I don't know, and honestly, I don't care anymore. She took her path, I took mine. Our paths are never going to cross again. That night, sitting on my terrace under a sky full of stars, I reflected on the entire journey I had been on since that Tuesday when I received the one-way ticket to Australia. 6 months ago, I was a victim who didn't know she was a victim. Today, I was a free woman who had learned the most important lesson of her life. It's never too late to reclaim your dignity, no matter who tries to take it away. Jasmine's letter had been her last attempt at manipulation. By burning it without reading it completely, I had closed that chapter of my life forever. Now, all that was left was to live, to truly live. A year after my great escape from the airport, I was sitting in the garden of my mountain home, reading a book on organic gardening and enjoying the tranquility I had built with my own hands. At 70 years old, I had discovered that life could start over as many times as you wanted, as long as you had the courage to close the doors that needed to be closed. Melissa had blossomed in ways I never imagined. Without the toxic influence of her parents, she had developed a strong, ethical, and genuinely caring personality. She was in her second year of university, studying business administration with the goal of opening her own financial consulting business for senior women. Her final project was titled Protecting Family Assets from Manipulation, a legal guide for seniors. "Grandma," she said to me that afternoon as we prepared dinner together, "I have something to tell you." "Tell me." "Gus contacted me today. He says you've been turning down invitations to give speeches about your experience." It was true. For the past few months, several senior organizations had invited me to tell my story. Apparently, the case had circulated in legal circles as a perfect example of how seniors could protect themselves from family exploitation. "I'm not interested in turning my family tragedy into a public spectacle," I replied. "What if it wasn't a spectacle? What if it was a way to help other people in your same situation?" "What do you mean?" "Gloria told me that Renee, your former neighbor, found out her son was stealing from her after hearing your story. And Diana says that since the word got out about what happened, at least 3 of her clients have come to review their legal documents because they suspect their families are manipulating them." I thought about those words as I chopped vegetables for the salad. It was possible that my story could help others, that my pain could become protection for someone else. "There's a conference next month," Melissa continued. "It's for the State Association of Senior Women. It would only be about 200 people, all women your age who might be going through similar situations. You want me to do it? I want you to do what feels right for you, but I think there's power in telling your story, power for you and power for the women who listen to you." That night I called Gloria to ask for her opinion. "Diane, I think Melissa is right," she said without hesitation. "Your story isn't just about revenge or justice, it's about reclaiming your personal power. That's something a lot of women our age need to hear. Don't you think I'm being exhibitionistic?" "Not at all. I think you're being generous. How many women are out there being manipulated by their own families and don't even realize it? How many are justifying abusive behavior because it's family?" She was right. For decades, I had justified Jasmine's and Mark's behavior because they were family. I had normalized their lies, their manipulations, their constant requests for money. If my story could help even one woman recognize the red flags, it was worth it. 2 weeks later, I was standing in front of 200 women in the auditorium of the State Association of Senior Women, telling my story from the beginning. I talked about the one-way ticket, the discovery of the plan, Gus's recordings, the confrontation at the airport, and the new life I had built afterward. "The most important thing I want you to understand," I told them at the end of my presentation, "is that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. It doesn't matter how long you've spent being a victim. It doesn't matter how much you love the people who are hurting you. It doesn't matter how much guilt you feel for protecting yourselves. A woman raised her hand. "Did you never feel guilty for leaving your daughter with nothing?" "At first I did," I admitted, but then I understood something fundamental. I didn't leave my daughter with nothing. She chose to trade her inheritance for 30 pieces of silver. I simply refused to be the victim of that transaction. Another woman asked how I knew when it was time to act. When I realized I was no longer living my own life, I was living to satisfy the financial needs of other people. My house had become a bank, my love had become a checking account, and my death had become their retirement plan. At the end of the conference, a line of women came up to talk to me privately. Their stories were devastatingly similar. Children who asked for loans they never repaid, families who made them feel guilty for having money while they struggled, relatives who controlled their finances for their own good. A 75-year-old woman told me her son had forged her signature to take out a mortgage on her house. Another told me her daughter-in-law had emptied her savings account using a debit card she had lent her for emergencies. A third confessed that her grandchildren only visited when they needed money for college, vacations, or new cars. "What can I do?" each of them asked me. "You can do exactly what I did," I replied. "You can decide that your dignity is worth more than the comfort of maintaining a family lie. You can choose to protect yourselves instead of protecting the feelings of the people who are hurting you." 6 months after that conference, Gus brought me news that filled me with a satisfaction I hadn't experienced since the day at the airport. "Diane, you're not going to believe what's happening," he said, arriving at my house with a huge smile. "Since your conference, my office has received more than 50 inquiries from senior women who want to review their legal documents and protect their assets." "Really?" "And not only that, 3 of them have discovered that their families were systematically stealing from them. One woman recovered almost $100,000 that her son had borrowed over 5 years. Another discovered that her son-in-law had been forging her signature to make withdrawals from her retirement account. Were they able to get their money back? In most cases, yes, but more importantly, they regained their personal power. They stopped being victims and became women who control their own lives. That night, having dinner with Melissa on our terrace, I reflected on the entire journey I had been on since that day when I received the one-way ticket to Australia. "You know what the biggest difference is between the Diane of a year ago and the Diane of today?" I asked my granddaughter. "What?" "A year ago, my value as a person was defined by how much I could give to others. Today, my value is defined by how much I respect myself." "Do you ever regret what you did?" "Never. The only thing I regret is waiting so long to do it." Just then, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Diane," said a female voice that sounded familiar, but I couldn't place. "Who is this?" "It's Denise, Mark's sister. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something important." "I'm listening." "Mark died last week. Car accident in Costa Rica." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not joy, but not sadness either. More of a sense of closure, as if a pending chapter had finally finished being written. "And Jasmine?" I asked, surprising myself for asking the question. "She's fine physically, but Denise wanted me to know that before he died, Mark confessed that it had all been his idea, that he had convinced her you had too much money and that they deserved a share. Jasmine finally understood that she had lost her mother by following a man who never valued her. Is she trying to contact me? No. She asked me to tell you that she finally understands why you did what you did, that she doesn't expect forgiveness, but that she wanted you to know that she realizes that she destroyed the relationship. Not you." I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long minute. "How do you feel?" Melissa asked me. "I feel free," I finally replied. "Completely free. There's no one left in the world who can make me feel guilty for choosing my own happiness over their convenience." That night, before going to bed, I went out one last time to the terrace to look at the stars. At 70 years old, I had learned the most important lesson of my life, that true love never asks you to destroy yourself to prove your devotion. My story had begun with a family that gave me a ticket to hell disguised as a dream. It was ending with a woman who had found heaven in her own strength. If you are listening to this story and you recognize your own life in it, I want you to know something. It is never too late to reclaim your power. It's never too late to choose your dignity over manipulation. It's never too late to be reborn, because at the end of the day, the only approval you truly need is your own. And that, dear friends, is something no one can take away from you if you don't let them.